Nobody tells you this when you were young. They teach you how to earn money. They never teach you where money actually puts you. Because money is not just a number. It is a position, a level, a place in a structure that most people live inside their entire lives without ever realizing it exists. Right now, at this exact moment, you are standing on one of 6 levels, and that level is determining everything. What you can afford, what you cannot, who respects you, who uses you, what doors open for you, and which ones stay locked no matter how hard you knock. Most people believe their financial situation is random, bad luck, wrong timing, an unfair system. But here's the truth that the wealthy figured out long ago. Wealth is not random. It moves in levels, 6 distinct levels, and each one comes with its own invisible prison, its own trap, a hidden mechanism designed to keep you exactly where you are. The people who rise know these traps. They study them, they plan around them, and sometimes they use them to their advantage. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which level you are currently on. You will understand what is keeping you there, and you will know precisely what it takes to move up. Because staying where you are is not neutrality. It is a slow, quiet surrender. Let us begin. Survival stage. This is where fear rules everything. Not the fear of failure, not the fear of judgment. The oldest, most primal fear a human being can feel. The fear that the ground might disappear beneath your feet at any moment. At this level, almost every decision you make comes from pressure. Not from choice, not from ambition, from pressure. Fear of rent, fear of debt, fear of one unexpected expense destroying everything you have. A medical bill, a broken phone, a lost job. One single event in your entire world collapses. This is not living. This is surviving. You are not choosing your life at this level. You are reacting to it every day, every hour. And here's what makes level 1 so psychologically devastating. When fear becomes your daily environment, you start making weak decisions. Not because you are weak, but because the human brain under constant stress cannot think strategically. It can only think about right now, this minute, this crisis. So you accept the toxic job because you cannot afford to leave. You tolerate disrespect because you need the paycheck. You take bad loans because the rent is due tomorrow. You choose short-term relief over long-term strategy. And every one of those decisions quietly digs the hole a little deeper. This is how people lose years, sometimes decades, not through one catastrophic failure, through 1,000 small surrenders made under pressure. But there is something about this level that most people completely miss. Pain can become education. Every financial mistake at level 1 carries a lesson. Every humiliation reveals how the world actually works. Every setback is data, if you are paying attention. Some people only suffer here. Others become students of reality. The people who eventually escape level 1 are not always the most talented. They are not always the most educated. They are the ones who became obsessed, genuinely obsessed, with understanding why the game works the way it does. They stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, how does this system actually work? That single shift in question changes everything. Because once you stop being only a victim of the game and start studying it, movement becomes possible. And that movement eventually takes you to level 2. Level 2, the illusion stage. This is where life starts to feel stable, but only on the surface. You are no longer drowning. You can pay your bills most of the time. You have a little breathing room, maybe a small amount saved, maybe 1 or 2 months of security sitting in your account. To someone at level 1, this looks like success, but it is not. This is where the most dangerous illusion in modern life begins. And I call it an illusion because it feels real. It feels earned. It feels like arrival. But here is the brutal truth about level 2. You are still entirely dependent on performance. The moment you stop working, the income stops. The moment one thing goes wrong, the safety disappears. You have not escaped the fragility of level 1. You have simply given it better furniture. A more comfortable prison is still a prison, and this is exactly where most people stop climbing. Not because they run out of ability, because they run out of hunger. They start to perform wealth instead of building it. They buy the car that signals success. They upgrade the apartment to match what their income suggests they should have. They take the vacation that proves to others and to themselves that things are good. They renovate the kitchen. They upgrade the phone. Everything looks successful. But underneath the surface, nothing fundamental has changed. One emergency can still break the entire system. One layoff, one economic downturn, one bad month, and suddenly level 1 is right there waiting. This is the modern trap. Comfort without freedom, stability without power, security without ownership. And what makes level 2s so psychologically dangerous is this. At level 1, you were desperate enough to change. At level 2, you are not. You are no longer desperate enough to act, but you are not secure enough to truly relax. You exist in the perfect middle zone of stagnation, too comfortable to fight, too dependent to breathe. Most people spend 30 years here, not because they are lazy, because comfort is deeply addictive, because performing stability feels safer than risking it. They defend their cage and call it a home, but sometimes something shifts. A quiet question forms somewhere in the back of the mind. What if this comfort is actually what is keeping me small? That question, when it finally arrives, is the beginning of real movement. And once that movement begins, you enter level 3. Level 3, the awakening state. This is where everything begins to change in a meaningful way. For the first time, you are no longer relying purely on trading time for money. You have built something. Maybe it is a business. Maybe it is a high-value skill that commands serious pay. Maybe it is a side income that runs in the background. Maybe it is investments that are quietly growing while you sleep. Whatever form it takes, it gives you something you have never truly had before. Options. And options are power. When you have options, you can say no. You can reject opportunities that do not serve you. You can think in months instead of days. You can make decisions from strategy instead of desperation. That shift from survival thinking to strategic thinking is worth more than any salary increase you will ever receive. You are still not rich at level 3. Let me be completely honest about that. But for the first time, you are no longer mentally poor. Mental poverty is not about what's in your bank account. Mental poverty is making every decision from fear. Level 3 is the first level where fear stops being the primary driver, and that changes your entire relationship with money. But here's where level 3 becomes dangerous, because comfort returns in a different form. At level 2, the comfort was financial stability. At level 3, the comfort is small success. And small success whispers things into your mind. You've made it. You are doing better than most people. This is enough. Why risk what you have built? And for many people, that whisper is where growth dies. They escaped poverty, but they never built power. They settled into a life that's better than before, but still limited. They plateau, sometimes permanently. Moving beyond level 3 requires something most people spend their lives avoiding. Risk. Real risk. Not reckless risk, not gambling, but the willingness to risk what you have built in order to build something greater. That line, right there, is the one most people never cross. They want comfort. They want safety. They want expansion, but they fear uncertainty. And so they stay at level 3. Better than most, but far from free. The ones who cross that line, the ones willing to risk the comfortable for the powerful, they enter level 4. Level 4, the leverage stage. This is where the air starts to get thinner, because fewer people reach this level, and even fewer truly understand what changes here. At level 4, you are no longer simply earning money. You are building systems. You are creating leverage. And leverage, true leverage, is where real power begins. Most people spend their entire lives exchanging time for income. They work harder to earn more. They chase promotions. They add hours. They sacrifice weekends. But at level 4, the game changes completely. You stop asking, how can I work more? And you start asking, how can I make one effort produce 10 results? This is the stage where money starts working for you. Your systems generate returns. Your assets appreciate while you are not watching them. Your reputation creates opportunities before you even ask. You are no longer reacting to circumstances. You are creating them. That is not just a financial shift. That is a fundamental identity shift. You have moved from being someone who responds to the world to being someone who shapes it. At level 4, ownership becomes more important than income, and that distinction is everything. Income pays for life. Ownership builds power. The people still stuck at lower levels focus on earning. The people at level 4 focus on controlling resources because they understand that wealth is rarely about labor. It is about positioning. A single decision made at level 4 can produce results for years, sometimes decades. One business model, one investment, one system built correctly. But here's the psychological cost of level 4 that nobody talks about. To rise this far, you have had to become more disciplined than the average person, more detached, more willing to make hard decisions. Sometimes you had to cut relationships that no longer aligned with where you were going. Sometimes you had to end partnerships that felt comfortable but were holding you back. Sometimes you had to walk away from people who couldn't understand your direction. And some people around you interpreted that as arrogance, as selfishness, as you changing for the worse. But it wasn't coldness, it was precision, the willingness to do what is necessary when it becomes necessary. Level 4 is where discipline becomes identity, where productivity replaces distraction as the default setting, where you finally understand, deeply understand, that short-term comfort destroys long-term freedom. If you can endure that discomfort, if you can tolerate the misunderstanding, if you can keep building while others are consuming, you eventually reach territory that very few people ever see. Level 5. Level 5, the dominant stage. Now things become serious. At this level, you are no longer merely wealthy. You are rich in the true sense of that word. Your resources exceed your needs by a margin so large that survival is not even part of the conversation anymore. You own appreciating assets. You have capital that compounds on its own. You have access to rooms and people and opportunities that are completely invisible to anyone below level 3. This is where wealth becomes influence. A phone call can move money. A decision can shift markets. An investment can change the direction of entire businesses. You are no longer inside the game. You are starting to shape it. But here's the truth that nobody prepares you for. Level 5 is not peace. It is pressure at a higher altitude. Because at this level, the competition changes. You are no longer competing with the average person. You are competing with other powerful people, other builders, other strategic minds. And that arena plays by completely different rules. The stakes are larger. The mistakes are more expensive. One wrong partnership can cost years of progress. One misplaced trust can unravel something it took a decade to build. Wealth at level 5 solves certain problems, but it introduces far more complex ones. Who can you truly trust? Who values you? Who only values your position? This is where power begins to distort relationships. Friendships become complicated. Partnerships become transactional. Motives become difficult to read. Power attracts both loyalty and deception. And the higher you rise, the more carefully you must observe intention. Vigilance becomes permanent at level 5. You cannot fully relax because maintaining dominance requires constant awareness. Threats no longer come only from below. They come from equals, from competitors, from people who smile in front of you while planning behind you. And there's a deeper cost. Many people who reach level 5 had to make difficult moral trade-offs along the way. They chose ambition over comfort, ascent over approval, sometimes power over principle. That transformation changes a person. The price of dominance is not only what you sacrifice on the way up, it is what you become. And that realization, when it arrives, often arrives late. But even beyond level 5, there's still one final stage, a level so rare that most people never even know it exists. Level 5, the dominant stage. Now things become serious. At this level, you are no longer merely wealthy. You are rich in the true sense of that word. Your resources exceed your needs by a margin so large that survival is not even part of the conversation anymore. You own appreciating assets. You have capital that compounds on its own. You have access to rooms and people and opportunities that are completely invisible to anyone below level 3. This is where wealth becomes influence. A phone call can move money. A decision can shift markets. An investment can change the direction of entire businesses. You are no longer inside the game. You are starting to shape it. But here is the truth that nobody prepares you for. Level 5 is not peace. It is pressure at a higher altitude, because at this level, the competition changes. You are no longer competing with the average person. You are competing with other powerful people, other builders, other strategic minds. And that arena plays by completely different rules. The stakes are larger. The mistakes are more expensive. One wrong partnership can cost years of progress. One misplaced trust can unravel something it took a decade to build. Wealth at level 5 solves certain problems, but it introduces far more complex ones. Who can you truly trust? Who values you? Who only values your position? This is where power begins to distort relationships. Friendships become complicated. Partnerships become transactional. Motives become difficult to read. Power attracts both loyalty and deception, and the higher you rise, the more carefully you must observe intention. Vigilance becomes permanent at level 5. You cannot fully relax, because maintaining dominance requires constant awareness. Threats no longer come only from below. They come from equal, from competitors, from people who smile in front of you while planning behind you. And there is a deeper cost. Many people who reach level 5 had to make difficult moral trade-offs along the way. They chose ambition over comfort, ascent over approval, sometimes power over principle. That transformation changes a person. The price of dominance is not only what you sacrifice on the way up, it is what you become. And that realization, when it arrives, often arrives. But even beyond level 5, there is still one final stage, a level so rare that most people never even know it exists. Level 6, the untouchable stage. This is no longer about money. At this level, money has become almost irrelevant. The numbers are too large to register emotionally. Spending feels like nothing. Losing $1 million feels like dropping a coin. At level 6, the real currency is legacy, influence, systems and structures that continue operating long after you are gone. This is where wealth transforms into historical force. The highest form of power at this level is not temporary control, it is institutional permanent. The ability to shape systems, to define rules, to influence outcomes across generations. At this stage, you are no longer playing inside the system. You are helping to define the system itself. You influence industry, you shape culture, you affect policy. Your decisions ripple through society in ways most people will never notice, and in many cases will never trace back to you. This is the territory of dynasties, of empire builders, of people whose names become synonymous with power, or in many cases, whose names remain completely hidden by design. Because here lies one of the most fascinating truths about ultimate power. The most powerful often become invisible. They no longer need recognition. Recognition at this level becomes risk. Instead, they move through structures, through organizations, through intermediaries and boards and institutions. They shape reality without leaving fingerprints. True mastery at level 6 is understanding when to be seen and when invisibility creates greater strength. The appearance of power becomes more useful than the display of power. And at this level, something profound happens internally. Wealth stops being personal. It becomes philosophical. What do you want to leave behind? What structure survives you? What impact continues after your name fades? That is the real question of level 6, because the final evolution of wealth is not position, it is not luxury, it is not status, it is meaning. The irony is brutal. You spend years, sometimes decades, chasing money, only to eventually discover that money was never the final destination. It was only the bridge toward impact, toward legacy, toward the ability to shape reality itself. And almost nobody reaches this point, not because they cannot generate enough money, but because they cannot think beyond themselves. They cannot think in decades, in generations, in centuries. The people who do change the world, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but always permanently. The closing. So now the question becomes unavoidable. Which level are you actually on? Not the level you tell people, not the version of yourself you present online, not the image you perform for your family or your colleagues. The real level, defined by your actual freedom, your actual resources, your actual control over your own life. Because here is the deepest truth in all of this. Most people find a level that feels comfortable enough and they stop climbing. They settle. They convince themselves that stillness is peace, that limitation is contentment, that comfort is success. And maybe for some people that is genuinely true. But if there is something inside you right now that feels restless, if some part of you recognized yourself in one of these levels, then you already know where you are right now is not enough. And that realization right there, that is not a problem. That is power. Because the difference between every level we just walked through is not intelligence. It is not luck. It is not even opportunity. It is hunger. The hunger to become more than what you currently are. The refusal to accept a life designed by fear, by habit, by other people's expectations. That hunger is what separates the people who remain trapped from the people who rise. And this is where I want to leave you with something real. Not motivation. Motivation fades. Something structural. Every level above where you currently stand requires exactly one thing from you. It requires you to give something up. At level 1, you must give up helplessness. At level 2, you must give up the illusion of comfort. At level 3, you must give up safety. At level 4, you must give up approval. At level 5, you must give up simplicity. At level 6, you must give up ego itself. That is why so few people climb, because each level does not just ask what you are willing to do, it asks what you are willing to become. And becoming something new always means leaving something behind. Growth is never only external. The money changes after the mind changes. The results change after the identity changes. The life changes after the standards change. And that's why most people stay stuck. They try to change their outcomes without changing themselves. They want a new life with the same habits, a stronger future with the same daily decisions, a bigger vision with the same comfort-seeking mindset. Reality does not reward that. Reality rewards transformation, not desire, transformation. So ask yourself right now, honestly, what level are your habits actually building toward? Not what you want, not what you hope for. What your actions today, your decisions today, your choices today are actually compounding toward. Because your habits always reveal your true direction. Every day you are either climbing or settling. There is no neutral ground. Every purchase either builds your leverage or reinforces your limitation. Every relationship either elevates your thinking or anchors it. Every hour of your attention either sharpens your future or blurs it. All of it compounds. Quietly, then suddenly. And one day, people will call it luck, but it was never luck. It was accumulation, momentum, years of disciplined movement invisible to everyone else, building toward a result only you could see. The map is now in front of you. You know the 6 levels. You know the traps. You know what each stage demands. The only question left is the one that has always mattered most. Are you willing to pay the price to climb? Because the next level is always available. The path always exists. Most people simply lack the discipline, the hunger, and the honest self-awareness to walk it. Now, the decision is yours. It always was.